Hello, and welcome back to the Halcyon Show with me, your host, Lorne Risley. And on this episode, let's kick things off, having been away for a while, with some disappointment. Destiny, the Xbox One edition as opposed to the Xbox 360 edition. I haven't gotten around to Destiny 2 for the moment. Why? Because I always find it interesting to play the prequels to things rather than just jumping into the sequels, and I'm glad I did, because I won't be wasting my time with Destiny 2 anytime soon. A little bit of a backstory here. A few years ago I was sat at my desk at Phoenix back in the day, not really doing much of anything. Unfortunately, it was a slow day, when I happened to be perusing through some of the upcoming releases of video games coming out that year. Came across two in particular, No Man's Sky and Destiny, which looked like they were going to blow things out of the water in terms of their expectation, the delivery of what they could achieve, the graphics, the gameplay options and the opportunity they would have. In fact, some of my friends who are way more into gaming than me even touted that this and No Man's Sky is just huge games that were going to blow the minds of gamers everywhere.
Everything is awesome. Everything is cool when we're part of the team. Everything is awesome when we're living our dream.
Suffice it to say though, that didn't really happen. And in the case of Destiny, which is the only one of those two games that I've played, it's a grind fest. And I mean, I got so bored grinding through this game with no real rhyme or reason to anything I was doing that I never completed it, which is rare for me with games, because once I've committed to buying something, I tend to like to play it through to completing it because I like to at least get my money's worth. I have a massive library over here of games that I've completed, even those that I didn't particularly like and haven't bothered to review, mainly because I always think of giving a game a fair shake. Destiny is probably the first game beyond Fable 3 that I have picked up, played, given the best chance I possibly could, and yet somehow I find myself wanting to find something better to do.
Fed up with freak!
To break it down as quickly as I can, the gameplay is decent for what it is, but ultimately is a rudimentary and somewhat three-dimensional version of the Halo mechanics, which is not surprising considering that it's Bungie that's produced this. You've got the RPG elements of a grindy kind of game, new weapons, new elements to add on to your character, but the customization is pretty lacking, if we're all honest with ourselves. When you're just out of the gate, you know, there's no real facial construction like there is with Bethesda games. The customization is limited to what is the best piece of armor, rather than how you can decorate your piece of armor, or like in The Witcher, for instance. You can customize the armor sets, you can add pieces depending on what the armor sets are like, but you can also improve them and you can always move forward with things. With Destiny, you have to grind until you get the thing you want, short of paying real world money for drops, which again I'm just fervently against. I don't like paying money for a game I've already paid money for. It's just a really cyclical, ridiculous way of doing things, if you ask my opinion. Add to that the landscapes just feel barren and sort of desolate. They're very detailed and pretty, I'll give you that, but again, there's nothing really to do. There's no interactions beyond just the occasional enemies running around. And when you've had games like Mass Effect, like The Witcher, like GTA, games that have a commensurate similar kind of budget and pretense for being, but somehow deliver much more when it comes to the feeling of a world, a mass of things to do with a myriad of different NPCs and in-game characters to interact with and build foundations with. Destiny, you just feel like you're dropped into a world with no real rhyme or reason behind it. And from what I hear of the second game, this feeling of a lack of identity and a lack of real coordination within the world is where this game is sorely lacking, and this franchise really needs to kick its own ass to get things moving properly.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
Now, yes, you could argue that this game suffered, like some games have more and more recently, with hype. They overhyped themselves to an almost hilarious degree, to the point where no reasonable developer or reasonable customer should expect the game to deliver. It should always over-deliver on the expectation, never under-deliver. But this game touted itself as becoming legend, exploring new worlds and galaxies, fighting across the outer rims of an unknown Earth, like in the future, but it's different somehow. 300-year lifespans, people coming back to life, these weird square boxes originally voiced by Peter Dinklage, now voiced by somebody else because it wasn't as popular as they thought it was going to be. It's just a ridiculous calamity of events that I'm sure when they were putting it together sounded like a great idea. I'm sure that when they said we're going to get Bungie to do the gameplay, we're going to get the people that helped write Halo in to try and create an epic story with intrigue, mystery elements, with a sense of militaristic values incorporated into there. Space travel, the kinds that Mass Effect originally promised before they started misdelivering in Andromeda. It sounds great, but the execution is so lackluster because you just know they have their eyes on the bottom line because of how much money they invested in this game. I think it was $500,000 that they ended up plunging into the development of just this one game before the second one came out, and already had a 10-year license with Activision, who are also renowned for the Call of Duty series, and I wonder why they would want to crank out 10 more of these bastards. Well, simply enough, it's another attempt to try and create a franchise that's going to churn out a new game every year to 2 years, barely improving on its core components, enhancing the graphics to a certain extent, adding certain elements to the gameplay without overhauling it completely and generating a brand new experience.
We happy? Vincent? We happy?
Yeah, we happy.
So, in essence, this game is effectively a Halo clone in a Call of Duty skin. It's really weird amalgamation of the two worst kinds of elements of both games. If they'd have somehow incorporated some of the original elements from the first Halo games with the core gameplay of them, maybe with a few Call of Duty elements sprinkled in, I wouldn't have minded that. But the story elements and the world and the sense of intrigue that should have come along by telling you just enough of what you need to know without completely leaving you in the dark. Just to give you a kind of element of the story, you're revived after a period of time, given very little to no information about what's actually going on before you're under fire from some weird six-armed or six-legged creatures with guns. And that's kind of it. The first couple of hours of playing this game, I genuinely had no idea what was going on.
Eyes up, Guardian. It worked. You're alive. You don't know how long I've been looking for you. I'm a ghost. Actually, now I'm your ghost. And you, well, you've been dead a long time.
A few moments later.
There's more ahead. Keep it up.
You son of a bitch! Why? Tell me why!
And that's having not played it when it first came out. I had time to hear from everybody else in the world to tell me this had a good story or this is what you need to look out for. But this game under-delivers in almost every department where it promised to succeed. And that's why ultimately I walked away from this game feeling unfulfilled, unsatisfied, and have no inclination to play the second one, let alone buy it. But gun to my head, if I have to give this game a rating of some description for people who've never played this game before, or maybe never even heard of it or thought about playing it, it's a very average game. By no means poor, but just average. Considering what it promised and what it delivered, it's an average game. It's a 5 out of 10. It's sad because it has all the hallmarks of a great game. It had all the potential to be a great game, but ultimately just doesn't deliver enough of the things that you need from a great game in order to be considered amongst the pantheon of truly great first-person shooters or truly great sci-fi types of shooters. I can only hope that given time, I might be persuaded to play the second one to see where the differences lie between the two. But if I'm going to be positive about this game, the graphics do look good. There's no doubting about that, especially on the next gen version, which I happen to be able to play both versions on the 360 and the next gen, and the next gen does look exponentially better. You can't argue that the gameplay is fun when you're in the frantic bowels of a all-out balls-deep fight. But that could be said of any any good first-person shooter game, there's nothing unique about it. I do kind of like the voice acting in the game. It's surprisingly over the top and otherworldish. I think it's the Seer or the Seeker or something along those lines, the first real NPC of note that you meet in the game beyond your weird Traveller Orb Peter Dinklage knockoff thing.
You must have no end of questions, Guardian. In its dying breath, the Traveller created the Ghosts to seek out those who can wield its light as a weapon. Guardians to protect us and do what the Traveller itself no longer can.
But he didn't say anything!
Just speaks with such grandeur about, I could tell you of all the great things that have happened before you arrived, and all the great things that you won't actually get to see coming forward in the game. But I won't waste your time with that. Here's another mission to go grind for a couple of hours.
Two hours later.
So, there you have it. Destiny. Finally took a shit on something. How cool am I? I actually have a negative thought about something. Yay! It must be all that time off. Anyway, please like, share, subscribe. Thank you very much for watching this video and indeed any other videos you've checked out of mine recently. It means the world to me. Please like, share, subscribe. Check out some of the other channels in the description below. They're all churning out great content and killing it in the subscriber numbers. I'm so happy to see that the collective of the smaller channels are starting to get a bit of momentum and getting moving in the right direction in terms of getting more audience and more eyes on their product. So I'm so happy for you guys, especially the guys in the description or anyone else I've linked to. But thanks all the same for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys on the next episode of Halcyon Blink.